Brace yourself for an electrifying showdown where the iconic Snoop Dogg flips the script on a relentless talk show host, delivering jaw-dropping revelations that leave the world speechless. This is Stories of Justice, your go-to channel for the most intense and shocking narratives that redefine the boundaries of conversation. Don't miss out on witnessing history unfold. Smash that like button, subscribe now, and share your thoughts in the comments below. The camera panned across a buzzing live audience in Miami. The set was brightly lit with the unmistakable energy of a popular primetime talk show. Viewers at home were expecting the usual blend of humor and insightful commentary. The host, Jamie Carter, a well-known progressive figure with a reputation for grilling his guests, was seated confidently. His polished grin was framed by the studio lights. Tonight's show was supposed to be like any. Jamie began with a tone carrying a hint of mischief. We have a very special guest tonight, someone you'd never guess would set foot on this stage. The crowd murmured, curiosity rippling through the room. Then, as if orchestrated for maximum impact, Snoop Dogg emerged from backstage dressed in a stylish, casual ensemble that exuded his signature laid-back vibe. His presence commanded attention, and the audience gasped, caught off guard by the unannounced appearance. Some clapped hesitantly, while Auntie Snoop Dogg approached the host's chair with calm confidence. "Thanks for having me," he said, his voice smooth and deliberate. The audience's reaction was a mix of intrigue and skepticism, setting the tone for what would become an unforgettable night. The stage was set, but no one, not even Jamie, could predict what was about to unfold. The real fireworks began the moment the conversation turned personal. The interview started predictably enough, with Jamie maintaining his usual charm. He leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other, and offered Snoop a polite smile. "So, Snoop, it's been quite a journey for you since your peak in the music industry. What's life like now?" Snoop met his gaze without hesitation. "Life is peaceful," he replied, his voice steady. "I focus on my family, my projects, and giving back to the community through my initiatives." Jamie nodded, but his eyes glimmered with a trace of mischief. He wasn't here to offer an easy conversation, and everyone in the audience knew it. Still, Snoop's calm demeanor seemed to disarm him. The crowd listened intently as Snoop spoke about his post-music career work, from supporting underprivileged youth to advocating for mental health awareness. "Interesting," Jamie said after a pause. "But let's be honest. Many people have criticized you for staying silent on controversial topics during your peak years. How do you respond to that?" The room seemed to hold its breath, anticipating how Snoop would handle the pointed question. However, he remained composed, his hands resting gently on his lap. "I believe actions speak louder than words," he said simply. "It's easy to talk, but harder to make a real difference. I focus on what I can do, not on what others expect me to say." There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Jamie leaned forward slightly, his expression sharpening. It was clear he intended to push harder, but the tension thickened when Jamie brought up a topic no one expected him to address. Jamie's smirk widened as he tapped his pen against the armrest. "Actions speak louder than words, huh? Interesting philosophy, but don't you think some moments demand words, especially when the stakes are so high?" His tone had shifted, carrying a subtle edge as though he was testing the waters before diving deeper. Snoop tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I believe people have their roles. My role was to create music and spread positive messages in my own way." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "And creating music meant staying silent even when your actions or words created division?" A few gasps rippled through the audience. The question wasn't just bold, it was incendiary. Jamie leaned back, folding his arms, clearly waiting for a defensive response. The room buzzed with anticipation, the tension almost palpable. But Snoop didn't flinch. Instead, he let the silence linger for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "Division has always existed," he said. "Blaming one person for it is easy, but it doesn't solve the problem. I choose to focus on unity, not blame." The audience murmured in response. Jamie seemed momentarily taken aback, but quickly regrouped. "Fair point," he conceded. "But speaking of unity, there are rumors and controversies, things people want to hear from you directly. For example, your relationships and personal life." The room erupted in a collective gasp. The air felt heavy as the line of questioning veered into deeply personal territory. Snoop's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a spark that suggested he was ready for this. What came next turned the conversation into something no one could have anticipated. Jamie leaned in, his voice lowering just enough to make the moment feel intimate yet charged. "Let's address the elephant in the room, Snoop. Many have questioned your choices, your silence during some of the most tumultuous times in recent history, and even your relationships. Are you here to set the record straight?" The audience sat on the edge of their seats, some whispering among themselves. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, a confrontation that promised fireworks. Jamie's smirk grew, sensing he was about to corner his guest. However, Snoop didn't take the bait. Instead, he straightened his posture, his face calm but commanding. "I am here to speak for myself," he said firmly, his tone carrying a subtle sharpness. "Not for rumors, not for stories made by people who do not know me." Jamie opened his mouth to interrupt, but Snoop wasn't finished. His voice gained momentum, cutting through the air like a razor. "Everyone has opinions," he continued, deliberate in his delivery. "But opinions are not facts. I know who I am and I know what I stand for. The rest is just noise." The crowd fell silent, absorbing the weight of his words. Even Jamie, the seasoned host known for his quick wit, seemed momentarily at a loss for how to respond. His smirk faltered, replaced by something resembling genuine surprise. Snoop's gaze swept the audience. "It's easy to judge someone from the outside," he added, "but it's harder to look inside yourself and ask why you feel the need to judge." The room erupted into applause, some rising to their feet. Jamie, still recovering, attempted to regain control. "Well," he stammered, "that's, quite a perspective, but surely you understand why people feel—" Snoop cut him off with a small, polite smile. "I understand more than you think," he said. The applause grew louder, but Jamie wasn't done yet. His next move raised the stakes even higher. Jamie leaned forward, his pen now forgotten in his hand, his voice taking on a sharper tone, one that seemed to dare Snoop to falter. "You know, Snoop, there's something people have always been curious about. How do you reconcile your platform of unity and kindness with some of the more, let's say, controversial statements you've made? Statements that many say have divided the nation." The room fell into an uneasy quiet, all eyes darting between Jamie and Snoop. It was the kind of question designed to corner someone, to put them on the defensive. The audience braced themselves, expecting either a deflection or an outburst. But Snoop, ever composed, didn't miss a beat. He placed his hands gently on his lap, his expression calm yet firm. "People see what they want to see," he began. "My work has always been focused on helping others, promoting kindness, and showing respect. I cannot control what others say or do, but I can control how I act, and I choose kindness." Jamie raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by what he perceived as a vague response. "But surely," he pressed, "there were moments when you could have spoken out, taken a stand." Snoop's eyes narrowed just slightly, his voice cutting through the interruption. "Taking a stand is not always about shouting the loudest," he said. "Sometimes it is about staying true to your values, even when it is not popular." The audience broke into applause, some even cheering. Jamie, momentarily stunned and unsure how to proceed, hesitated briefly. He leaned back, offering a small laugh as though to regain his footing. "Fair enough," he said. "But let's not ignore the fact that silence can also be seen as complicity." Snoop tilted his head, his expression cool but with a glint of something sharper. "Words without action can be seen as hypocrisy," he countered, his tone even but resolute. The room erupted again, the energy now electrified as the audience reacted with a mix of shock and admiration. Jamie's face shifted, his confidence visibly wavering. This wasn't going as he had planned. But the moment that truly silenced the room was still to come. Jamie adjusted his tie, clearly searching for a way to regain control of the conversation. The tension in the room was thick, every word feeling like it carried the weight of the world. Finally, he leaned forward and delivered the question that no one thought he would dare to ask Snoop Dogg. He began his tone deliberately measured. "Do you ever regret some of the choices you've made in your career and personal life?" A collective gasp echoed through the audience. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed stunned, their movements momentarily pausing. The question was not just bold, it was deeply personal. All eyes turned to Snoop, waiting for his reaction. For a moment, he didn't respond. He sat still, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable, including Jamie. Then he spoke, his voice calm but piercing. "Regret is for those who do not take responsibility for their choices," he said. "I know who I am, I know the life I chose, and I stand by it, not because it is easy, but because it is mine." The audience erupted into applause, louder and more unified than before. Some people stood clapping with admiration. Jamie blinked, his composure cracking for the first time that evening. He opened his mouth to speak, but Snoop wasn't done. "We live in a world where it is easy to criticize from the sidelines," he continued, his tone unwavering. "But the truth is you cannot understand someone's life unless you have lived it. I do not owe anyone an explanation for my choices." The applause grew deafening, the crowd clearly siding with him. Jamie leaned back in his chair, visibly humbled. His earlier bravado was nowhere to be seen. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling was even more surprising. As the cameras cut to commercial, the studio audience buzzed with chatter, a mix of awe and disbelief. Snoop had not only held his own against Jamie's relentless questioning, but he had turned the tables entirely. The show's producers scrambled behind the scenes, some furiously typing notes, others muttering into headsets about the segment's viral potential. Meanwhile, on stage, Jamie leaned over to Snoop, his earlier confidence replaced by something more subdued. "I'll admit," he said with a half-smile, "I didn't expect you to handle that so gracefully." Snoop regarded him with a polite smile, his tone measured. "I don't play games, Jamie. I speak the truth, and that is enough." The comment hung in the air. Jamie caught off guard by his guest's sincerity. The once commanding host now seemed almost apologetic. "Fair enough," he muttered, offering a nod of respect. Backstage, staff members and guests whispered as Snoop passed by, his presence commanding attention. Some were eager to compliment his composure, while others were simply stunned by his ability to dominate the conversation without raising his voice. He thanked them graciously but didn't linger as he exited the building. A crowd of reporters and photographers had already gathered outside, questions flying from all directions. "Do you think Jamie went too far? Were you prepared for this interview? Do you have anything else to say?" Snoop paused briefly, turning to face the flashing cameras. "I said what needed to be said," he stated simply. "Nothing more." Without another word, he stepped into his car, leaving the crowd buzzing in his wake. By the next morning, his words had sparked a nationwide debate that no one could ignore. Clips of the interview had spread like wildfire across social media, with hashtags like Actual Snoop Speaks and Actual Snoop vs. Jamie trending worldwide. People on both sides of the political spectrum chimed in, dissecting every word, every gesture, every nuance of the exchange. Cable news networks replayed the moment on a loop, with pundits arguing over whether Jamie had crossed a line or if Snoop's responses were a masterclass in grace under pressure. Some called him poised and unshakable, while others claimed he had sidestepped accountability. Regardless of opinion, one fact was undeniable. He had captivated the nation. The debates weren't confined to television. Coffee shop conversations, workplace discussions, and family dinner tables buzzed with questions about the boundaries of professionalism and personal respect in interviews. Could an interviewer truly seek the truth without overstepping? Was it fair to put someone's private life under such scrutiny? Amid the frenzy, Snoop issued no further statements. He let his words from the interview speak for themselves, a decision that only fueled the public's fascination. His silence was not evasive but deliberate, a reminder that sometimes restraint can make the loudest impact. In the weeks that followed, Jamie Carter addressed the interview on his show, acknowledging that he may have underestimated his guest. "I'll say this," he told his audience. "Whether you agree with him or not, Snoop Dogg knows how to command a room." For many, the takeaway from the event was not just about Snoop or Jamie, but about the broader lesson of handling adversity with dignity. In an age of heated debates and viral sound bites, his composure became a rare example of rising above chaos. As the headlines faded, one thing remained clear: Moments like this remind us of the power of measured words, the strength of self-awareness, and the importance of standing firm in one's truth. The interview had a profound impact on the community, sparking conversations about respect, integrity, and the importance of understanding before judging. Educational seminars and workshops began to incorporate lessons from Snoop's approach, emphasizing the value of calmness and thoughtful communication in resolving conflicts. Schools used clips from the interview to teach students about media literacy and the significance of holding strong personal values amidst external pressures. Social media influencers and public figures lauded Snoop for his exemplary behavior, encouraging others to emulate his ability to remain composed under scrutiny. Ultimately, the event served as a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in confrontation, but in the grace and wisdom to navigate challenging conversations with empathy and authenticity. Disclaimer: all stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. We advocate for a world where everyone has equal rights under the law and where society continues to grow in fairness, development, and civilization. Our goal is to share heartwarming stories that contribute to making life better. Any resemblance to real events, individuals, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories are not meant to reference any actual people, events, or entities, and contain no political or religious connotations.